be forever? Ugh.
All right, welcome to Dynasty Saturday Night Five, a Dynasty fantasy football podcast on the Going for Two live network. We are not live tonight. We are pre-recorded, so we can't see any comments or anything in the chat. If you have certain fantasy players or anybody who with the tight end designation, or you were relying on high-scoring NFL games to have fun this season, you may feel like David after the dentist, and is this going to be forever? I'm Brian Ford here with my co-host Josh Walker. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a while since we've been here. Been some ups and downs, especially as you all know, I'm a huge Atlanta sports fan. The Braves snuck their way into the playoffs just to get swept. But then the Falcons last night, which we're recording this on Friday, last night Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards. Kyle Pitts caught some catches. Drake London got like his second most yards, 2 touchdowns. Darnell Mooney, if you guys listen to the breakouts and sleepers, I told you he was a sleeper. He's up there leading the team in targets, I think. So it's been some ups and downs, but I'm happy. The Falcons actually look pretty good.
So is it one of those things now where we're back with Pitts, or is it it takes 500 yards for him to eat? I don't know.
No, I think we're back. I think the first game or two they were just trying to figure some things out. I think Kirk's finally confident. I think he got his confidence back. So I mean, especially given all you need to be a good tight end this year is like 3 catches, 40 yards, and you're probably a top 10 tight end. So I think he's back.
All right. So on this show, we do lists of 5, talk about Dynasty fantasy football, and tonight we're going to be talking about early season storylines that, you know, some of which have been causing a lot of misery and have us wondering, is this going to be forever? But first, just some general thoughts about how the season's gone. You know, we can do this a number of ways. Like, the way I was thinking about it is, there's been a lot of ink spilled and a lot of good conversation about what's going on with the NFL this year. And, you know, I don't know that we need to go into too much detail about it because, you know, people have been talking about it for a few weeks, and that's not really sort of what we do with this show. But, you know, when you think about it from just really high up perspective, that it's a pendulum and it swings back and forth in the NFL, right? And then sort of a little bit lower level than that is, you know, more about, say, you know, the chess match that's been going on the last few years with small personnel, big personnel. You know, defenses get smaller and spread out. Well, now I'm going to do gap run down your throat kind of thing. Too high, you know, versus, you know, trying to throw over the middle, and, you know, limiting explosives versus trying to generate explosives and that kind of thing. And then I think, you know, a little bit more narrow down is specific coaches and schemes, and, you know, specific players and current trends that are going on. And it's really apparent, I think, the upshot of all this is that, you know, we probably as fantasy football managers want to focus on, as best we can, players from offenses that have the answers to what's going on in the NFL. And it seems like in this particular pendulum swing in the first few weeks, although the scoring has increased a little bit last couple of weeks, is that there's fewer people who have the answers than maybe we thought.
Yeah, I agree. It's I can't remember what podcast it was, so I can't shout it out. But they were talking about how the EPA expected points per play is shifting to where running teams are get more efficient running. So you can see it with the Ravens only throwing 20 something times. Mark Andrews only running 8 routes. Teams are just running the ball a lot more because it's more effective with how the defenses are playing to just run the ball and make short passes. A lot of that's because cover 2. A lot of that's because defenses got really small. So now the offenses are countering with more run. But I mean, just when we thought like zero RP was a thing, it might be back if they're going to run like this. It might shoot some running backs up. So I'm interested to see how it keeps playing out, if that keeps happening, or if defenses adjust and then, other things start to open up, because quarterback play has not been good either, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So that might be another reason why no faith in quarterbacks.
Yeah, I haven't done any best ball resurrection drafts yet, or like a second chance startup or anything, and I'm curious to see what the ADP is gonna be like between running back and wide receivers specifically. And I was thinking last night too, if I had a Superflex Dynasty startup today, right? Who would the first few picks be? And I mean, when you think about Mahomes and what's going on with the Chiefs, when you think about Allen, who is playing very well, but is in, a run centric efficiency offense and not a YOLO ball offense. And then when you think about, some of the struggles that the Eagles are having, it's like, who's the 101 now, in a dynasty startup, right? Was it Justin Jefferson?
I mean,
like even in a super flex, right? Like
I put Lamar up there. I've always been really high on Lamar. He's, even when the team runs a lot, with Derrick Henry runs for 200 yards, he's still putting up 25 plus fantasy points. Just on MVP, I think he's really in his prime right now. And while I do think Mahomes is like a better actual quarterback, for fantasy, Lamar's the guy. Maybe CJ Stroud, but otherwise, I'm going Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, some of these receivers that you can have for a long time.
All right. Well, before we get into the list of 5, today's show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. They have it all: best balls, pick'ems, DFS with the battle royales, and other forms of that every week. So get in there on Underdog and start playing. You can use our promo code GF2 and get a 50% deposit match. I think they jacked up how much you can get with our promo code. So I want to say it's up to 1,000. I think I saw on Jeff's Armchair Show. But either way, go to the Underdog app, order underdog.com, use the promo code GF2, and start playing, start winning. There's going to be Best Ball Resurrection, where you can draft, redo the season, right? Based on what's happened the first few weeks. There's weekly pick'ems, where you can do higher, lower on, player stats and things like that. There's the weekly sort of DFS structures they have: Battle Royale, Dog Bowl, and then other different like forms of DFS that they have there. So yeah, hop in there and have some fun, and maybe win some money. Because the one thing I do like about weekly stuff is, kind of get to hit reset every week. So, yeah.
Yep.
All right. So the first topic that we have here of the 5 that we wanted to talk about is, what's up with quarterbacks, or at least, talking about quarterback play, the quarterback position, how the rookies are doing, that sort of thing. I'll leave it to you to where you want to start with quarterbacks.
So I think we should, since this is a dynasty show, I think we should start with some rookies. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is absolutely smashing. We all knew, at least me and you knew, that he would be really good. But he's even looking better with the pass, on the run, going through progression than I thought he would. I thought he'd be a little more, need a little more work in that, a little raw. But he actually looks really good. I can't remember the stat, but he went like 2 entire games without having to punt or something like that. And that's pretty crazy from a rookie. I don't think I would move him above Caleb Williams just yet after 4 games. I think the Bears situation might not be quite as good as we thought it was, with the offensive line being terrible. Now, he is missing some wide open people on some plays, but we've also seen the talent he has making some good deep throws. So some people are like, I saw a poll on Twitter. It said 9% of people would take Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams. And I don't blame people for that, but I just think we need to be patient with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm not surprised that poll would say that. I mean, people have been pretty reactionary after the 1 week of Isaiah Likely. People have had him at Dynasty tight end like 6 or something like that. Like on KTC, right? So, I'm still somewhat of a skeptic on Jaden Daniels. I know it sounds, I think. So first of all, the most recent game was against Arizona, right? And now that we have a few weeks of data where, we're figuring out who's good, who's bad, how defenses are playing, Arizona is a cake matchup, right?
Mhm.
And yes, he does have this, 80% completion rate over the last couple of weeks, but it's still mostly lower A dot stuff, scheme stuff, one read and go type stuff. And I still think he's not as good throwing over the middle and tight windows and things like that as he should be. But showing progress. I still think his ceiling is lower than a guy like Caleb Williams, and so if there's a way that I could leverage Daniel's fever and get a Caleb plus, I would do it because I think ultimately that ceiling is higher with Caleb, and I also think that Ryan Poles, he passed up on CJ Stroud, right? In a sense, right? And you know, played it where he got Caleb, right? And he wants to make this work. He wants Caleb to be the guy and not have Jaden Daniels be the guy. So all this to say, I think the leash is going to be short on Shane Waldron and even Eberflus. So if you're worried about Caleb being stuck in sort of with a bad OC like that Waldron may not be long for Chicago. So if I can get a plus on top of Caleb for Jaden Daniels, I would definitely do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think JSN, back when Waldron was our offensive coordinator, he was asked about him, and that interview right there, like he was pretty professional, but you could also tell, like, I think it's a really horrible spot for Caleb Williams to be in. I mean, he's got good talent, yeah, but if your offensive coordinator can't scheme anything open or like make things easier for you, it's going to be tough. So yeah, just stick with it. The other one I want to talk about was Bo Nix. He's had some flashes, but overall, I I don't have too much high hope for him. He showed the ability, so maybe something will click. But at least in this offense, maybe the next 2 or 3 years, I'm not super high on him. But at the same time, if you got him early second rookie draft, it's not that bad because he is a quarterback and he's got a little bit of rushing upside that maybe a little more than I thought he would.
Is Bo Nix Kenny Pickett?
Kenny Pickett, that is a little faster, but yeah, and I think Nix can go through run an offensive system a little better than Pickett. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he'll only throw 7 touchdowns in 10 plus games, but it's a pretty good. They're pretty close.
Yeah. So another quarterback that I want to talk about is Anthony Richardson.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people would take Jaden Daniels over Anthony Richardson, and to a degree, I understand it. But I would also say, that the ceiling is higher, and to be patient with Anthony Richardson. I know how it looks, and I know some people who are snarky about he can't run an offense. He just runs and throws deep. Think that they're right and that kind of thing. But Jaden Daniels had to do 5 years in college and do VR goggles between years 4 and 5 to get better as a processor and reader of the field to be where he's at right now. And he's already 24 years old and essentially like a quote unquote finished product coming into the NFL, right? Think about that versus the number of starts that Anthony Richardson has had since high school, and yet he's still in some ways holding his own and at least has the faith of a coach to start in the NFL with that little experience, because that's how good he is and that's how high the ceiling is, right? I will admit, though, I thought he was going to be a little bit more progressed as a passer going into this season. His private coach, Will Hewlett, was gassing him up in the offseason and saying, he's a man on a mission and he's improving a lot and he's out to win MVP and that sort of thing. So, that guy has a good reputation. So I figured, that, okay, he's taken some steps. Now maybe the shoulder slowed that down. So I will admit that I was wrong on that. I thought we'd be a little further along than we are now to start the year. But, don't think that the first few weeks is evidence that Anthony Richardson is a bust or can't handle the NFL or that sort of thing. And I still think, even though, he had that hip pointer and that kind of thing, he's built to last more than a guy like Jaden Daniels is.
Yeah, I agree. And you just saw the talent, like that throw he made to Alec Pierce, where he like stumbled on the ground and just threw it 60 yards. I mean, somebody said that was lucky, but I think it's more skill than luck to be able to do that. And that just shows the talent he has. I kind of expected Shane Steichen to scheme some things up a little bit better than he has. They've kind of struggled on offense, but I think it's going to get a lot better. He's played under 10 games. He's very young. He's raw, but the skills are there, and a lot of his interceptions have just been decision making. And that's something that will get better the more games you play, the older you get. But he looks pretty good outside of a few bad games.
If you can find a contender who has Richardson, and maybe you're not necessarily rebuilding, but maybe a little bit, you're kind of maybe going to make some noise in the playoff, but you're not necessarily in contention for a bye, so you can kind of like afford to roll the dice a little bit more on a guy. I would try to see what kind of price you can get from a contender on Richardson. Another guy to talk about, Trevor Lawrence. Now, there's a whole lot of numbers on one side that point to how he's less than we thought, and there's numbers on the other side that say he's still pretty good when you isolate certain things. He hasn't been accurate like from 0 to 10 yards, especially this season. There is problems with coaching and play calling there. I don't want to make too many excuses for him. He's got a great arm. He's mobile. I think he can be a leader in the locker room for people, not to get vibesy. So I think there's patience and faith as far as let's get this coach fired. But is he good? Is he very good? Is he good enough to still rank in the top 10 to 12 dynasty quarterbacks? Would you rather have Brock Purdy than Trevor Lawrence?
Purdy has looked actually pretty good this year, because last year he was first in Yak. This year he's like almost last and still doing pretty good. So
I have to eat some crow. Purdy's made a lot of progress this year.
And he looks pretty good running too. His 10-yard split was faster than Debo and Christian McCaffrey. Which only by a split second, but still. But I still think I'd rather have Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is only 24. Like I tweeted out when Notre Dame played Louisville, the Louisville quarterback is older than Trevor Lawrence. So I still think there's time for him to grow. I think the coaching is holding him back a little bit, but he's also not looked the best. So I don't know if that's mental, but I think he's good with upside to be even better. I don't have him in the top 12. I think I'm 14. But the first sign of life, I'll bump him up there, especially with how some of these quarterbacks are playing. So I think he definitely has top 10 upside. You just got to stick with him because he's still pretty young.
I have Lawrence 14. I have Purdy 16, but I think I might still be. I think I'm being a little stubborn still at this point because, as you said, last in Yak, and I heard a whole lot of other numbers the other day that really point to, and film watchers too, talking about Purdy, that he's taking steps, that it's less of like the EPA machine being run in the McShanny scam offense, and it's now a little bit more like Purdy himself than it used to be. So I've kind of got him at the top of like guys who I think are lifted by the scheme tier, and I think I need to start bumping him up. So bumping him up would put him over probably Justin Herbert too. What are we doing with Justin Herbert? Going into the season, there was a good argument to be made that, like, listen, Jim Harbaugh's no dummy. Greg Roman's no dummy. They've never had a passer like this. They're not going to throw the ball 14 times a game, but the volume is not there. And I know he's been hurt a little bit, but the volume part is the question here. And is it to a point now where it's I hate to use like a hack phrase like buy low, but is it to the point now where he's dropped low enough where you can buy, expecting that there's going to be some sort of rise again as the coaching regime continues to refine the roster? Or what are you doing with Herbert?
If I have Herbert, I'm definitely holding. Now it's not a good time to sell because the value is almost about as low as it's been, and I think it's about as low as it will get. The main thing that I see holding Herbert back is injuries. He just always seems to be hurt, so we haven't really seen him play 100%. But even in the last game, when he was playing on a pretty bad injury, he made a really good throw in the red zone. So I think he's got top 5 quarterback talent, and I don't think the system's wrong for him. I think he could benefit from a strong run game and play action deep passes, but he's just not healthy, and I think that's really affecting him because if he can't move and he's not mobile, able to fully move around in the pocket, it's not really the Justin Herbert that we had ranked in the top 5 for a while there. So I think he needs to get healthy and get used to this system, and I think he'll be really good. And it's a good buy. Him and Trevor Lawrence are really good buys if you're maybe in the middle or not really looking to win this year. I think they're really good buys to go after.
Yeah, good point. He last week, Herbert on this, hobbled ankle and plantar fasciitis and stuff, rolls to his left and fires this like kind of 3/4 arm zip to Dobbins down the sideline. Now Dobbins dropped it, but Herbert put it like tight window, and it's like Justin Herbert's a goddamn good quarterback, and I really hope that the roster around him. So before we move into that team, because it's one of the teams that the storyline that people were waiting to see, wrapping up quarterback. It seems that the guys who have been around long enough to remember when Tampa 2, like cover 2, was in vogue the last time, are doing okay. Not that this list is all of them, but guys like Darnold, Dalton, Carr, Baker, Geno. These are value quarterbacks that I think if you grab them as your QB2 in a startup, you're pretty happy at this point. Yeah. Anything on those guys you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's just one quick thing. They've been really good. My best dynasty team so far is a team where I went into the season knowing I was going to be, or what I thought would be, weak at quarterback because I didn't want to give up picks. I got a few first and second. I have like Justin Jefferson, Pickens in London. I don't want to move them. I have Gibbs. I had Pacheco. But my quarterbacks were Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. And going in, I was like, this might be what really holds me back. And right now, that's my best team. So regression might come a little bit, but I still think they're in good enough systems. Baker's in a good system, knows that offense really well now. And Darnold's with one of the better head coaches and offensive minds in the game. So I think they're both going to be really good. And if you're lucky and have those guys, you could try and trade them, but I'm going to ride this out and just see where it takes you.
So let's talk about Justin Herbert's Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, the guru, the emperor, comes into the NFL, and everybody thinks that they're going to be running the ball and three yards in a cloud of dust and throw the ball 10 times a game and that sort of thing. And McConkey looks good. In fact, I think there's been some people who I saw who were like skeptics who said, like, look at this number and this number. It points to being on a list with these guys, and it's like he could be a budding superstar. Like, I love him. I still think that there's a bit of a cap on that ceiling with the type of player he is, but he seems to be okay. I want to talk. You can say anything you want about McConkey too, but I also want to talk about Dobbins. After, hold on one sec. Let me refresh to PPR. The first 2 weeks, he was running back 4 and 5. And it was like, okay, Dobbins is explosive. He's the running back that we thought he was. The volume may be low because not low, but they may try to manage his touches. They're going to still work Gus in, and Vidal's going to get a chance because Gus is dust and that sort of thing. But the team's going to want to run a lot. He still looks like he can go chunk plays. There's a reason he was a 6.1 yards per carry back coming into this season, et cetera. But then the next 2 weeks, and it could be game script and all that, right? But running back finishes of 38 and 34 against the Steelers and Chiefs, who are good defenses, right? And he's got a bye this week, but Denver's a tough defense in week 6. And then it opens up a little bit more with Arizona as a good matchup in week 7. I got really excited about Dobbins and was like, Dobbins back. And I kind of had him in my top 24. And now I'm like, is there enough on that team around him where the pie is going to be big enough, where the offense is going to be efficient enough for us to say, okay, he's going to be on the field enough of a long drive that where those chunk plays are going to come more often, and we can now rely on him. I'm not so sure. McConkey and Dobbins, what say you?
McConkey, I love. I think he's going to be good. Like you said, that offense, though, everyone else besides him, it's just Quentin Johnson had a few fluky touchdowns or some blown coverage, but overall, he's still not really separating. I think if you had him, hopefully you sold high, all that, because I think it's going to be right back to how it was for him. Josh Palmer hasn't been good. Lad McConkey, a rookie wide receiver, has been the number one target. He's not really built to be that guy, in my opinion. I think he's better supplemented with another guy out there that is getting targets. So I think a lot of that, though, does depend on Justin Herbert's health. If he's still going to be banged up trying to play, I don't think it's going to look as good for J.K. Dobbins, just because if the receivers aren't getting open and Herbert can't really move, we just stop the run and make them beat us. But I think the last two games were just two like top 3 to top 5 run defenses, who with Herbert hurt just made sure to stop the run. So I think he will be better than that. But I am a little concerned about having 14, 15, 17 carries. I'm a little worried about that over a whole season, what it would do to his health, just given the history. But I hope it keeps up. He's getting 3 to 4 targets a game, so that's good. Yeah, I don't know if I'd sell or buy, but if you got him, you're happy. I think it'll get better though.
For especially running backs, I think the conversation is more about like what do you want out of them this particular season, and less about like dynasty rankings in a vacuum. But Chuba Hubbard or J.K. Dobbins the rest of the way?
I'm going to take Chuba Hubbard, I think. He's been really efficient. Even when Brooks comes back, he's coming back from a major injury, and he's their future back. And if Chuba Hubbard's playing this well, I think it'll be more of a committee, and he'll still have pretty good value. Even as RB2, some matchups. So I think I'd still take Chuba over JK.
Rest of 2024, J.K. Dobbins, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White.
I'm going to say Bucky Irving. Rest of 2024, he looks so good running the ball. He fumbled last night, but it really, because I think with the Buccaneers playing how they are, there are going to be a lot of games where they're ahead. They don't have to throw the ball to Rachaad White 15 times for playing behind. And Bucky Irving looks so much better on the ground, which the last game or two, White has made some big runs. So maybe Bucky's pushing him to play and run a little bit better. But I think the talent's there, and I think the Buccaneers realize it.
Next up on our list of topics, the New Orleans Saints. Right now, we spoke in the preseason or whatever about our optimism with Clint Kubiak introducing wild things like, oh my gosh, motion, or actually using play action, right? And I think our sort of agreement was that this was going to be good for Olave and Shaheed. We maybe had our I had my doubts about Kamara with his age and declining efficiency, and sort of our doubts or concerns for everybody because of the bad offensive line. First few weeks, the Saints looked really, really good. The OC is kind of doing things that mask some of the O-line's weaknesses. But let's talk about the Saints pieces. Let's start with Kamara. Our friend Doc, Dr. Jim Ferretti, was taking his victory laps over me on Kamara. I would still caution folks about that because there's only so many he's on a pace for I think 340 carries or something. Like there's only so many carries that you want to give a 29-year-old running back. And I know people are going to laugh, but one reason that he's getting all these carries is there really is nobody else. Like Jamal Williams is dust. And I'm not saying Kendre Miller is great, right? But it certainly well within the range of outcomes that when he's back from injury, he's taking some of these carries off Kamara's back. Now, I know that we like Kamara for his PPR, and so maybe that, certainly, gives us a floor. But let's talk about Kamara because I like him a bit. I moved him up a bit in my rankings. I think it's kind of fair. You kind of have to based on what he's done. But I would still caution folks. And if I was a contender and had Kamara, I would maybe try to leverage him for a back that I had more faith in for the rest of the season, but was still sort of fit like the contender profile. Is there another contender whose roster you can work something out with where, say, I don't know, they have Mixon maybe, or I don't know, Aaron Jones or James Conner, and what kind of plus can you get? And and maybe you throw back to them, because they've got some injuries at wide receivers, so you throw like a depth wide receiver back at them. So, what do you think about Kamara rest of the season?
I'm torn because he looks really good. He looks like he has more burst than he has in a few years, but at the same time, the usage is a little concerning. He had 26 carries in week 3, 19 in week 4, 20 in week 2 when he blew up. I don't think that's sustainable, especially with Taysom Hill banged up now. He was taking some goal line work away. My only concern is with Kendre Miller's Dennis Allen just absolutely hates Kendre Miller. He looks for an excuse to go and say shit about him to the press, which I hate Dennis Allen. I think he's a horrible coach. I'm glad the Falcons beat them the other day, but at the same time, I think they're just going to feed Kamara. And if he doesn't get hurt, he's going to keep doing this. I think the efficiency will drop off some, but he's good enough in the passing game where even, as we've seen before, if he's not the most efficient, he makes up for it with his receiving work. And if Taysom Hill stays hurt, I mean, they might get some carries to Jamal Williams, but I think Kamara is going to continue to have a lot of touchdowns. So I'm fine with selling him, especially if there's someone who really likes him and you can get a good haul for him. But if you're contending like a top 2 or 3 team, I think you might as well just ride this out while you can.
So let's then talk about David Carr. Derek Carr, right?
Derek Carr. David's his older brother, yeah.
Once a year, I will do the David, and I just did it. So let's talk about Derek Carr. With Derek Carr, we saw him, really blow up first 2 weeks, but the idea was, well, they haven't been in a neutral game script. The first 2 weeks were blowouts, and then we saw a dip in week 3 in the game against Philadelphia, but was still good in week 4. Even though he only threw for 1 touchdown. We're looking at oh wait, I'm sorry. No, that's different stats. But anyway, so 2 losses in a row to Philly and to Atlanta. And I guess the question is, I guess it's easy to say he's somewhere in between the first 2 weeks and the second 2 weeks for Derek Carr. But I guess it's like when I think about other quarterbacks who are around him, right? In my rankings or just in general, when we look at their value, guys like Geno, Baker, Darnold, Stafford, right? Is he in with that bunch, or is it just going to be where the matchup's going to have to be really good to have faith in Derek Carr? Like, we've seen that this is good for Olave and Rashid, and so I think their stock is up, and we can feel a little safer about them. But the quarterback, what do we think about Carr?
I haven't moved him at all. I have him at quarterback 31, and I think I'm fine with him there. I'd rather have Geno. I'd rather have Darnold. But I do think Carr in this system will be better than he has been, but I still think he's just Derek Carr. He'll have some blow-up games. If they're ever behind, he'll probably put up some good stats playing from behind, throwing a lot. But I think he's fine. I think most people kind of see him as the same, so I don't really think you could sell too high. especially after these last 2 games. Maybe after week 2, but he's okay. I don't want him to have to rely on him every week. I'd rather do like plug in for a bye week or if the quarterback gets injured. So he's a QB3 for me.
Yeah. Okay. I see. So I did bump him up a little bit. After the first 2 weeks, we kind of had that proof of concept with the Kubiak thing. But after quarterback finishes of 6-3, then quarterback finishes of 29-25. Doesn't get any easier next week against Kansas City. Can probably get some points against Tampa Bay in week 6. Week 7, tough matchup against Denver. The Chargers defense is playing above expectations right now. Then he eases up a little bit with Carolina, but Atlanta's going to be a tough matchup, divisional, right? Then you're going up against Cleveland. I think. Let me ask you this. Let's say we kept my rankings intact, and the order is the same, right? Does Carr belong with those guys I mentioned before, like Geno, Baker, Darnold, Stafford, or does he belong with guys like Cousins, Rodgers, Justin Fields?
I have him below almost all of those guys. So I'd say he's more in the Cousins and Rodgers, the older guys who are still pretty good, but their future's not looking super great. So I'd have him below Darnold, Baker, and I'm still pretty high on Fields. Fields looks good, so I definitely have him below Fields. Yeah, he's fine.
He's fine. That's the seal of approval, right? What do they call that? Damning with faint praise, right?
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the Rams. Ravaged by injuries are the Rams. Offensive line, wide receivers. The storyline going in was going to be, well, now we get a healthy Cooper Kupp, to pair with Puka for the entire season. What's going to be the Kyren Corum balance, and things like that? What's the defense going to look like without Aaron Donald, et cetera, et cetera? It has not looked good. Their defense is one to pick on if you're playing weekly matchups, if you're playing DFS. On the offensive side of the ball, which is what folks, I think, care about a little bit more, only so much Stafford can do with the injuries that are there on the offense. Kyron's volume is more than I expected. I expected Corum to have a little bit, I think people did overrate Corum, but I thought, he'd get a drive here or there, to rest up Kyron. I guess, McVay is probably even more inclined to be like, all right, well, the poop hit the fan. I can't really afford to give Corum a drive here or there. But I am a little concerned that he's getting, 85% of running back touches and things like that. Like, I don't know if that's sustainable, but he did it last year. So I guess first off, let's talk about Kyron, and then we'll talk about the injured receivers and what to do with them. What are you doing with Kyron this year? You're on mute.
I knew that would happen. It was just a matter of time. Yeah, I really like Kyron. I have him on a lot of teams just because I got him kind of late in some rookie drafts because I'm a Notre Dame fan and kind of a homer. So I have him in a lot of teams, and I'm very torn about trying to sell him because in teams I'm contending, I like the points he's given, but I just, given the Rams' history, how much they're having to use him, he's had some injuries in the past, even at Notre Dame. I'm kind of scared. Like I don't want to see him have this many touches, if I'm being honest. Like, yeah, it's good for fantasy, but I'd rather you last all year than get hurt week 9 or week 10 and then be out the rest of the season. But I think that's how it's going to be because that's all they can do. Now, maybe if they get really out of it, they clearly out of playoff contention, I don't see why they wouldn't give Corum some more run. But at the same time, Kyron is McVay's guy. He trusts him. And one thing that did kind of bug me is, and it's just how people are before the season starts, talking about Kyron going to return some punts, which he did last year. There are people with tens of thousands of followers with like paid Patreons telling people to trade Kyron Williams. They had Corum in the top 20, Kyron like out of the top 10. It's so annoying. Like, I don't know. It frustrated me. I'm laughing at them, not to their face, obviously, because I don't want to be rude, but it's really stupid. It's reactionary. When Kyron's out there, he's going to get a lot of volume. I was never really high on Corin, but that team looks horrible. Like Stafford's value just dropped completely. I have him in a few redraft teams late. I dropped him. He's throwing to Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, and Jordan Whittington, which Whittington's a fine dynasty player, but at the same time, when Cup and Puka are back, he's going to be non-existent. Their injuries have just killed them. It's kind of sad to see because I want to see Cooper Cup keep doing what he was doing the first week or two. He looked really, really good. Puka looked good. Stafford looked good.
So let's talk then about Cup. Going into the season, kind of there was that late off-season buzz where it's like, actually, Cooper Cup's really, really healthy, and this offense is going to run through Cooper Cup like it used to, and he's sort of rising up best ball ADP. There were some folks who were still skeptical, and it is. I forget to double check. It's a different ankle, right, that he hurt this time than the one he had last year.
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it is.
So either way, like, is this just proof that the skeptics were right that, hey, 32-year-old, never been the same since the Triple Crown season, oft injured guy we shouldn't have been investing in? And I guess, like, even more so, what can we expect from him coming back? What is his dynasty value right now? I think, Puka's value is fairly insulated, although I think there's some folks who have maybe leapfrogged him in some folks' rankings and things like that. But, does Cooper Kupp hold the same value as, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, other aging wide receivers?
Especially Mike Evans, no. I think Devontae's going to get a better situation here sometime this season, so I'd rather have him. I mean, just 21 targets and 14 catches. If you do that every game, you're getting tackled a lot more than a lot of guys. I hate it because he's so good, but at the same time, I just don't trust him with the volume that he's going to be fed to stay healthy. I have him on a few teams, and I can't really sell him right now either because the price is just so low. So I'm just going to hope he comes back and can give me some production. I think that's all you can do at this point. I mean, you could, I guess, go and buy, but don't give anything too much.
So I'm trying to think about the situations that I would buy. Like, say I'm on like a fringe contender, maybe trying to get a good price, or someone who's going to buy and then try to flip when he comes back, from the injury. I'm wondering what the risk is in the price that you can get on the other side. Like, are people just too scared now?
I think so. If someone offered me a second round pick for him, I'd obviously take that. I'd take the second round and just move on. But I don't think a lot of people are going to want to do that, especially with this 2025 class. It's going to be pretty deep. I don't know. It's really tough because when he's there, he's a top 10 wide receiver, but he's in his 30s. I don't know what Stafford's going to do after this. And without Stafford, I think Kupp's value is just, even with another good quarterback, they don't have the same chemistry. He's going to be hurt. I don't see it's not looking too good for him in the future, if I'm being honest.
All right, let's play in a vacuum. Cooper Kupp or Terry McLaurin?
I'm going to take Terry McLaurin, and I don't have any shares of Terry McLaurin. I always think he's overvalued, but he's out there playing, and he's pretty consistent, even if he doesn't have a super high ceiling. So Terry McLaurin.
Cooper Kupp or Amari Cooper?
Amari Cooper.
And right, so you're taking the guy attached to Deshaun Watson now, above Kupp,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. Cooper Kupp or Christian Kirk?
I'll take Christian Kirk, especially with a new coach.
Cooper Kupp or Stephon Diggs?
I think Diggs is another good sell high because he's got a pretty low ADOT, relying mostly on touchdowns. I still think I'll take Diggs, though. That's a little closer, but I'll take Diggs.
Okay. All right, our next topic on the list is we're already at our fifth topic: tight ends. All right, so there's an article that just came out on RotoViz about the tight end scoring conundrum, and I wanna get some time to read that, but I haven't gotten time. So one thing, just in general, big picture, I've been wondering is how much of the tight end scoring being down is a function of the trends we're seeing in the NFL. How much of it is a circumstantial collective amalgamation of individual tight end stories, right? Like, is Dalton Kincaid not scoring the same as, Mark Andrews not scoring, the same as other people not scoring? Like, is it happenstance that just is causing this misery, or is it has something to do with the league-wide trends? I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's both. I think like for Dalton Kincaid, I was not really super high on him, as you know. So this is about how I expected this to go. But at the same time, they just don't throw the ball as many times as he used to. Allen isn't throwing 30 to 40 times. He's throwing 20. And even then, if he's a target leader, he might have 4 or 5 targets, maybe 4 or 5 catches. He has 1 touchdown, but besides that, it's looking kind of grim. Same with Mark Andrews. He ran 8 routes, and I looked in one of the games, I think week 3, and I looked to see how many Likely ran, and Likely only ran 12 routes. So I think a lot of these teams are just running more. And I think also bad quarterback plays come into it. Rookie quarterbacks coming in, still trying to figure things out. There's a lot of injuries. Njoku's out. Kittle was hurt for a little while. McBride had a concussion. Laporta, I think, finally had. I don't really know what's going on with Laporta. I think that's just still a young player. When Jameson Williams coming on, they don't have to try and get him the ball. They're running a lot better. But I still like him. It's a little bit of everything. Running the ball more, just maybe the way defenses are playing. But I think it'll level out. I think it was just kind of pretty bad there for 3 or 4 weeks. So I think it'll get better. Regression will hit. So I don't think it's anything like this is how it's going to be, because the tight end's deeper than it has been. Because even Brock Bowers popped off for 2 weeks, but his last 2 weeks have been kind of slower again. That's bad quarterback play, game script, some other things. So I think it'll get better.
I think I tend to agree that it's both individual stories and a little bit more collective, like in the case of, say, Andrews or Kittle, keeping guys into block more, etc. Let's talk about Kelsey. So obviously with Rice out, and we don't know how long, Kelsey gets the bump. But the whole thesis with Kelsey coming into the season was, well, they're going to slow roll him and save him more for the playoffs. So now you're asking this guy that you were going to slow roll to now have a bigger role, at age, whatever it is, 34 or 35 now. I'm just trying to think. I'm looking at my rankings here, and it's like, are any of these tight ends guys that I would want to buy? Like, obviously we love Bowers, right? We love McBride. There's some ceiling with Laporta, even though, like, there's some complications with more target competition. I still believe in the talent for Kincaid and Pitts, but it's just a thing where you got to see it a little bit more. And then then we have the olds like Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews, right? I don't know if any of these guys. I mean, they're in some sense there's some buy low opportunity there, but like, do I really want to, right? Like, if I'm a contender, am I better off just piecing things together with trying to grab Ferguson off of somebody who doesn't need him, or piecing together Tucker Kraft 1 week and Goddard the other, or something like that. Like, I want to believe what you're saying, that tight ends are going to positively regress, but as individual assets and what to do with them, I'm not exactly sure where I'm at. And I wish I had an answer, but I kind of don't,
Yeah, I'm not really sure, honestly, if I'm trying to buy Kelsey. I'll still buy Mark Andrews. I traded Najee Harris for Mark Andrews straight up last week. I think that'll get better just because he's still with Lamar. He's been a top 5 tight end his whole career. They're just not throwing as much, and I don't know if that'll change. Derrick Henry's running the ball, so if they're running like that and winning games, they might not have to. But I still think the talent's there. Kelsey's a different story to me. One, he's old. He's just not getting open as much. And Patrick Mahomes made a remark how he's got like a bunch of bodies on him to where he's getting double and triple teamed. And I think with Rice out, I think that they're just going to do that even more. They're going to make Xavier Worthy beat him, so I think this helps Xavier Worthy more than Travis Kelce. That plus they're winning without Travis Kelce being the main guy. So why force feed someone the ball and get them hurt? So not trying to buy Kelce. I'm trying to buy Andrews. I'm not obviously not going to buy Kincaid. It's Brock Bowers, man. He's a top 3 tight end for me now. I think I have him 3 or 4. He looks really good. He's getting open, making people miss. Looks good in the open field. It's just bad quarterback play on a team that's not that good. But I do like him a lot. I think he's one of the ones I'm actually very excited to have.
Yeah, I between other guys falling and him doing well early season, like he's my one now. He's my tight end one now.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with that.
I want to talk a little bit about Pitts because I was like the Pitts truther, like we both were, but I kind of went out on a limb and said stop it, and played the whole videos and everything that we were doing, and so
yeah,
I think there's a case to be made where there's still like the coaching and the quarterback and everybody's still kind of figuring things out. One thing to think about with the NFL is, coaches and other people tend to look at these things in chunks, in quarters, right? Like first few weeks, you're figuring out what works and what doesn't. You self-scout a little bit, you make some adjustments. The bye week, you do that even more, that sort of thing. And so there's a little bit of that, right? I think last year we did an episode after like week 3 or 4 of like comparing who the top 12 were in 2022 and saying, at every position and saying, look at who the top 12 were and like calm down, So I think there's a little bit of that. At the same time, part of, the idea with Pitts was that the coaching staff was going to be smart enough early enough to know that he's not quite a tight end and not quite a wide receiver and to use him well. And I don't know that they've been doing that. And then on top of that, I'm no like film watching expert, but it does seem that maybe he's never going to have the explosion and quickness that he had before that knee injury. Like he looks better. He can actually turn both directions this year, but I don't know. It seems like that he doesn't have that kind of quickness and juice. And when you have an offense that is spreading the ball out to guys like Mooney and McLeod and that sort of thing, I'm going to eat a little bit of crow here on Pitts. I'm wondering how much I need to eat. Obviously, big game last night, in a game in which the quarterback throws 500 yards. But, I got him down from my tight end 1 to my tight end 5 already. And I'm starting to wonder if it's ever really going to work for him, even with this new coaching and this new quarterback, because they've got other ways to distribute the ball and win that don't include like utilizing him and his skill set, right? Like he's can sometimes get out physicaled by linebackers and safeties, right? He's not really fast and quick enough to beat corners, and so he's kind of in this tweener stage where I'm starting to lose faith. So I thought that, like, especially since I went out on a limb and pounded the table for Pitts, I should at least address that, it hasn't been like very good the first 4 weeks before last night.
Yeah, I agree. And I was honestly very down on him until last night. I do like, you look at 7 catches for 88 yards. You're like, okay, that's a really good game. But in the scope of Kirk Cousins throws for 500 yards, like you want a little more than just under like 20% of the total yardage for Pitts. Like they're throwing to Kadarius Hodge, they're throwing to Ray McLeod. Mooney's arguably their their best receiver as far as fantasy goes. So I think they're just spreading the ball around. But at the same time, Kirk Cousins has a history of throwing to a tight end a lot, even with good receivers. And I think there's still some rapport being made there. So I think temper your expectations and the upside you thought of Kyle Pitts, but I still think he's going to be good. And I just think it's going to take more time off the knee injury. If he keeps looking better the rest of the year, we'll know that he's still gaining strength, quickness, and even confidence in making the same moves or trying to make the same cuts that he used to. I think that did play a big part in this, and it still is. He doesn't. Someone tweeted a clip of him in college running, and then one of him this year, and it just looks different. It doesn't look like the player they drafted, but I still think he's good. I still think he can be a mismatch a lot of the time, but temper your expectations, and he's not going to be probably the tight end one. I mean, any tight end could be any given season the way that they are, but I don't think he's a unanimous top 3 tight end anymore.
So let me ask you a bonus question as an Atlanta fan. I think on paper, if you just look at the touch percentage between Bijan and Tyler Algier, it's concerning for fantasy managers. I think you peel the onion just a little bit more. It's a little game script thing where they got out ahead, and so they used Algier as a hammer. But still, that's not good because we want Bijan touching the ball. What are you seeing as you watch as a fan? And should Bijan managers be worried? Like, another thing I was thinking about besides like who's the 101 in a startup is who the hell is Dynasty RB1 with Brees and Bijan starting out slow, with McCaffrey injured, with Achane nerfed by Tua being out. Like, is Saquon Barkley all of a sudden now like the like the RB1 in Dynasty? Like, but what's up with Bijan?
I think a lot of it, I think he's their guy. I think they want him to handle most of the touches, but there's been I follow a few beat reporters for Atlanta. They've mentioned he's had kind of a slight shoulder injury. And I think with the 1,000-yard rusher sitting behind him and Tyler Algier, I think they're just playing it extra safe with him. Now, he hasn't made a lot of like big runs, but he still looks good. He's making people miss. I think they're just being really careful with him, and because Tyler Algier is a really good running back, and I think they really like him. So I think they're just trying to be careful in the usage. So I'm not worried about Bijan. The leagues I have him, I'm still throwing him out there. He's still my RB1, just because this is the first time we've seen him with a good actual coach that's given him good touches and good schemes. As far as Brees Hall goes, I got to eat some crow on this one. And Braylon Allen, man, he looks really good. I came in there and shit on him. I still don't think he's doing anything Estime couldn't do. That was my main argument with Braylon Allen. They're both really, really young, but you got to give credit where it's due. He's looked really good. I think the coaching staff really likes him. But Brees is still getting the goal line touches. He's still getting 20 touches a game. And I think that offense is going to get better. I think they had kind of a tough stretch with matchups and opponents there, especially Garrett Wilson's had some really good cornerbacks covering him.
Oof. Yeah.
So, I'm going to give some credit to Patrick Surtain. That dude is shutting everybody down.
He's starting to be one of those corners that actually matter. Like elite wide receivers are matchup proof.
Yeah,
but is Surtain among that? I don't know.
I think so. Like, I'm not going to sit Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase just because Surtain's on him. But if it's anyone that's just outside of that, like Drake London, George Pickens, I'm not going to start. Like, I might find another option. So he's really good, but I think the Jets are going to get better. I think Brees is still going to be really good. Bijan's going to be really good. Yeah, Saquon, man, he looks great.
Okay,
he's got that burst. One of his runs he made, I was just amazed by how quick he shot through the hole and reached top speed. It's the old Saquon, and I'm very happy about that.
All right, bonus content. One of the things I've been talking about this year is I have way too many leagues, and I don't have the time to manage them. So my rosters get stagnant, and I end up with teams that I hate because it's just a mishmash, and I don't get in there and make enough trades fast enough. But I made a couple trades, so I want to get your feedback on them. All right. I sent a 25 second and a 26 third for Kelsey and Jaleel McLaughlin.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's
Second,
it's a
third.
contending team. I could use the Kelsey points.
Yeah, McLaughlin's getting a lot of run. I don't know what they're doing with Javonte Williams. SMA's out. Blake Watson's not a thing. So McLaughlin's even getting some goal line work. So if you're contending, yeah, you gave up a second, but if Kelsey comes around, I think you're going to look really good with that.
Another one on a sort of middling team that, like, if I can make a push, I would. All right, and maybe I'll share a screen on this to make it a little easier because there's like
There's a lot
5
of people.
players involved. Yeah. Hold on one sec. I think it's this tab right here. Okay. So I sent Hawkinson and Pickens. I think some people like Pickens a little more than I do, but I am coming around to that he may be a little better than I thought. And I got back Higgins, Mason, and BTJ.
I like your side a lot more on this one. I think Higgins is. I don't have him on many teams because I'm not the highest on him, but he's still really good
neither.
on a good team.
Yeah.
Brian Thomas looks really good. I should have stayed as high as I was initially on him. I was just afraid the system was all it was, but he looks awesome. Jordan Mason in that system with McCaffrey out looks really good. Hawkinson, we don't know when exactly he's going to come back and if he's going to be 100%. Never played with Darnold before, and I do like George Pickens, but I also like T. Higgins and Brian Thomas. Not better, but better together, and I'll take Mason over Hawkinson. So I really like that one.
Okay. All right. So yes, I actually do make trades.
No, our Dynasty Degens League, I did not pay attention to that, and I hate my team. I'm trying to rebuild, but I only have like 2 first rounds and a horrible roster, so I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with that one.
Man, life gets lifey, and I think next year the goal for me is to get down to a number of leagues that I can like reasonably manage. Because I think for a lot of people who do this sort of thing and have like the dozens of leagues like I do, I'm not saying that they aren't as busy or whatever, but it's kind of like their main use of free time, sort of like, and for me, there's always going to be things that come before it, right? Like, taking work home as a teacher is always going to come before it. The political work I do is always going to come before it, right? Like, friends, families, always going to come before it. Not that other people don't, but I don't know. I think for me, the goal next year is to be realistic, cut down the number of leagues, and so I can really give attention to the attention that each league deserves. And none of the ones I cut are going to be Nico Collins rosters. I can tell you.
Man, what a stud!
Oh, love it.
He looks so good. He's bullying certain corners. He's outrunning people.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for him.
Yeah. All right.
I agree with you on that. Plus, like, people's brains work differently. I don't have as much bandwidth as some other people do to where I get off work and just sit down and start doing rankings, write articles. Like, I got to sit down and let my brain react. Some people can, some people can't.
Yeah.
I also need to drop leagues. It's just a lot. I go through and do them, and I skip leagues. I don't look through the waiver wire like I should. So if you need to cut leagues, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, go touch some grass, folks. What are you doing? All right, that'll be a wrap for us. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review on the audio feed. Please make sure here on the video, subscribe, notifications, like, comment, all that jazz. Time for plugs. Josh, where can we find you and your work?
You can find me tweeting at Rotonaut, ROTONAUT. You can find all my rankings at goingfor2.com. I've gone through and did some. I just haven't hit publish yet because I'm making sure everything's right. So I'm going to do that soon after probably week 5. Make some changes. That's all at goingfor2.com. That's pretty much all I've been doing right now. So,
all right, you can find me on Twitter at ffjunkie_. Dynasty Fever at Dynasty Fever Pod. We've also kind of had trouble making schedules fit, especially with me and my new job. But we should be having an episode sometime next week or the week after, doing somewhat similar topic of digesting what's happening and talking about some moves that we can make based on that. The writing stuff is on hiatus now that I'm back to teaching and back to working and that kind of thing. So I don't know. We'll see. But please make sure that you look at the Going for Two Discord. It's free. Lots of channels. Not many chuckleheads. Actually, zero chuckleheads on there for sure. And also, we have a podcast pretty much every day or night of the week here, right here on the YouTube channel and stuff for Going for Two. And goingfor2.com, of course, is the mothership website with DFS redraft, dynasty, etc., etc., etc. That'll be it for us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And
Go Irish. We're still in the playoffs.
And well, it's certainly not Go Braves time.
No, they lost. They're done.